What's up, guys? What's going on? So today I want to talk about something I haven't talked about on this channel, which is retrograde planets in the natal chart. So retrograde planets often there's a big misconception about them. What they have to, people look at them in their chart and they think, oh, I'm screwed, or this means I have bad karma, or I don't know what they think. But I'm here to tell you today that essentially they are related to unfinished karmic business. So we're looking at these from the karmic perspective, and we're gonna go from Mercury, Mars, Venus, Saturn, all the way to Pluto, every single retrograde, and we're going to explain them one by one, what they mean and what work you need to do, what it means if you have it from karmically, and what you need to do about it. So let's roll the intro and let's get into it. All right, what's going on, guys? So let's start with Mercury. So Mercury retrograde. So this is so these first three: Mercury, Mars, Venus. These are the inner ones, right? These are the most uncommon ones, the most rare ones. But these are the ones that show that are the least subtle. So Mercury retrograde is when someone in past lives, there's something to do with how they communicated with themselves, like the internal dialogue that they have, or how they communicate with other people. It could also be, having used their voice in a wrong way, like a wrong type of messaging, or not use their voice enough, like not spoken up enough, or perhaps there's some type of like failure to express their authentic self, right? The throat chakra issues. Or just miscommunications and misunderstandings, stuff like that. So basically, this one it's a karmic need to reevaluate the way that someone thinks. So people with Mercury retrograde are very internal with their thought processes, right? They are people who are more right-brained, so it's more of that abstract type of thinking, and they're reevaluating how they think, how they speak, how they process information, and it's essentially they're being asked to slow down so that they can have greater insight into this. And then, all of the retrograde planets are really a lot about mindfulness, right? They're a lot about when you live a life and you're very, very unconscious and you're not mindful of how you are, that's when you run into patterns that are not good. So the slowing down of the retrograde motion, it does give more of a reflection. So yeah, with Mercury, just like self-expression that's authentic, and being more learning in this lifetime to be more clear with communication and how one processes information. So a lot of times Mercury retrograde people can overthink. And like I said, they can be very, very introspective. So yeah, a lot of artists have this. So it's not a bad placement. It's just that's kind of the karma there. So okay, let's see. So with Venus retrograde. So Venus retrograde is a karmic struggle around self-worth and relationships and how one views love, how one views attachments. It can manifest by there being like an over obsession with relationships, or with love to kind of be the end-all, save-all. So, so there's lots of karmic lessons around this, right? And ultimately, everything in relationships and love, it's tied to self-worth. So in past lives, these individuals may have had very unbalanced partnerships or different dynamics in relationships that were not very healthy. Maybe they were like superficial types of relationships, or there's relationships that had lots of anxiety linked to them. Regardless, there's a do-over in that sense because it comes from the self needs to, like Venus is about self-love. So the self needs to learn how to love itself. So there's more of this like internal Venus energy. So the goal with Venus retrograde is to go within and love the self, to find that beauty within, which sounds so like cliche, but that's like Venus retrograde, right? Venus is love energy, retrograde is internal. So, it kind of like pushes them also, it's our values too. So it pushes them to also redefine what they value. They can be great artists, because they're spending time thinking about these types of things, what they value. And really developing a stronger sense of self-worth. And then that then leads to them approaching love, And like with this, it can take some time. So there can be like a lot of trials and errors, a lot of like kind of it's like with the South Node. It's like where you can run into your South Node or even tough aspects in general. Like for example, I have Pluto square Venus, and I know that it's gotten better now, but it was a train wreck for so many years, for example, right? So yeah, learning to approach love in a very authentic way, where there's not that anxiety of trying to like prove themselves, and so they can just be themselves, and whatever works, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, right? So how it can manifest, revisiting relationship dynamics, and being very deeply introspective on love, like self-love and love in general. So yeah, so I know quite a few people with that, and a lot of them are in very good relationships, but have struggled with them in the past. So now we have Mars retrograde, so the last of the inner planets. So Mars retrograde is basically Mars is that masculine forward moving energy. And just to be clear, Mercury retrograde has about 15% or so of the population, I believe, and Mars and Venus, I think that Venus is around like 8 or 10, or no, Mars is about 8 or 10, and I think Venus is very low, like 6, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that. But anyways, so Mars retrograde could be a misuse of power, failure to act with the right intention, or acting too much, like for example, anger issues, right? So I always think of like Mars as sometimes as like doing the right thing. So it's like, let's say there's a situation that comes up in a past life where someone is supposed to have someone's back, or is supposed to stand up for something and they don't, or there's just like an action that they go overboard, like their anger like gets the best of them over and over and keeps like sabotaging everything they have going for them in their life. That's examples. So unresolved karma around anger, like I said, assertiveness in general, like I said, whether it's under assertiveness or over assertiveness. For example, someone who has like a tendency where they're people pleasing, they just don't know how to get their point across, or like they that's more Mercury. They just don't like know how to stand up for themselves, or do the right things when they're supposed to do it. And taking action is obviously a big part of Mars. So in this life, or I guess I would say before that. So the past lives with Mars could be around the misuse of power, or not enough use of power, like I said, aggression. But yeah, a lot of time, whenever it's talked about like failing to act when it's necessary to act, that's like, I really feel like that resonates very deeply, right? Obviously, like I said, it can be the extreme with either of these, like too much or too little, because ultimately you're trying to find a balance with all these archetypes. So you can tell a lot by the entire chart whether it's likely to be the too much or the too little. So basically in this lifetime, the individual with Mars retrograde is learning to channel this drive and ambition into a more conscious way. They're trying to become more patient all of the times, right? And kind of have more authenticity around how they assert themselves, what like how they apply themselves in that way. And yeah, so I would say like a lot of times they're here, so learning patience, being more balanced with their assertiveness, and sometimes there can be like this hesitation to act, right? So sometimes these people can feel like held back, kind of like, like the Mars retrograde, it's like making it hard for me to be assertive, But sometimes it's just usually more of an analysis around this like very impulsive energy. But they can a lot of times they can get it. They can have this come in bursts, So there's more I could say, but we'll leave it there. Okay, so now Jupiter. So Jupiter retrograde, this one's a very interesting one. It is very much about beliefs. So I really like Jupiter retrograde because I feel like people who have that are very internal with their philosophies. Like they're people who in past lives were maybe misguided. Maybe let's say they were very conditioned, for example, and they didn't learn to find their own truth for themselves. So like I always say, our truth represents like what we our dharma, like what we do with our life, is based on our truth. If my truth is that the most important thing is making money, then I'm going to only do real estate or finance or something like that. If I believe that it is to helping people, I'm going to do something like I'm doing now, right? So basically, our truth, we see how strong it is, and a lot of people have past lives where they let some institution or even some person or something, some culture, basically dictate to them this idea of truth instead of them going within and finding it. So people with Jupiter retrograde could have very misaligned beliefs and that over-reliance on external guidance when it comes to finding truth and determining what is real. So the lesson, I would say, is to find this wisdom internally. That's why I said that they spend a lot of time, they tend to be deep thinkers, people who are more internal with their philosophy, etc. And lots of questioning of faith and like just questioning a lot of things, not just moving into things without thinking. So with that said, Jupiter retrograde could also show itself as someone who had misplaced beliefs, right? Or I already said that, but that's another way of saying it, because it can be from either extreme, or too much optimism, right? Spiritual disconnection that came from the belief system. And I would say that overall, it's about, finding that within, right? Finding that within and having a more personal relationship to faith. And and also, Jupiter's very much about growth. So, kind of taking your own path to finding that, right? To finding the things that are important to you. And so there's just that karmic need to develop your own belief system and not rely so much on others. Okay, so and it's not to say that people with that should only learn from themselves. It's just that they should question everything and be introspective about it and seek out different type of philosophies. Okay, Saturn. So Saturn retrograde is a very interesting one. I would say so it's a planet of karma. You could look at it. Everyone has their own Saturn placement, and if someone is unfulfilled with respect to the karmic responsibilities, or even mismanagement of boundaries, being not being disciplined enough, right? That in past lives that not essentially, like, some people talk about Saturn retrograde as being linked to like a karmic do-over. I think that's a little bit far, but I think the idea of someone who maybe avoided accountability, or on the other extreme was like overly burdened by accountability, right? So yeah, really it's about developing discipline, responsibility, inner strength, understanding that there's some things there's some in life you have to be responsible for some stuff, right? There's sometimes you have to lean into responsibility. So yeah, they do. They're here to develop this new, I guess you could say, this new relationship with responsibility where they don't see it in such a negative way, and where they're not avoiding it. So I would say it can manifest as like a lot of self-doubt, maybe even feeling like overly like there's too many expectations on them. But yeah, this one I want to spend a little bit more time on, because I think that a lot of times there is the reason people do talk about this being like a karmic do-over is that because or a life do-over. It's because Saturn is that ultimate planet of karma. So if you skip over, if you don't get your Saturnian karma archetype in this life, and however it is in your natal, there's just that unfinished business, right? Which is the theme of this video. So like that avoidance of, of responsibility, or being overly rigid when it comes to rules. That person that is just like so follow the rules, follow the rules, follow the rules, don't think outside the box at all. So these are examples of it. So yeah, it's like, what does responsibility mean to you? What does discipline mean to you? What's the balance, right? What's the correct balance? And as well, what just happened on my screen? Okay, yeah. So also, I think Saturn retrograde is very linked to family and to family generational patterns, right? And a lot of people with this can feel as though they're here to break some of those, or that they've taken a lot of those on. And yeah, also Saturn retrograde is about authority, right? So there can be like a karmic struggle with authority, whether it's like societal or like parental. And yeah, the person can kind of feel like they are carrying a lot of weight. So what can happen is that Saturn retrograde can delay achievement, delay growth. A lot of times it slows down that process for people, just like Saturn aspects and Saturn tends to do. It gets better with age. So and Saturn being the planet of time, so that yeah. So and like I was saying, it can manifest as self-criticism. A deep fear of failure. Also, just not feeling like you're being recognized enough. A lot of delays in that sense. But the goal is inner strength. And like I said, redefining success, what success means to you, and what responsibility means to you, and not being so rigid, right? Healing past life rigidity and closed-mindedness and whatnot. So, cool. Okay, I just want to spend a little bit more time on that one because a lot of people ask me about it. Okay, so Uranus retrograde. So Uranus retrograde is basically, I see it a lot in charts of people who either, so the Uranus archetype is about individuality, individualism, the process of becoming your own self, right? Not free of conditioning. So I see it a lot in people who could have this fear of change, this fear, who maybe were pushed, either they're like overly rebellious and it was done so in like a reckless way where it's like, okay, are you doing this to be reckless, or are you doing this to, because this is truly what you want, to be reckless / just for the sake of being rebellious, or are you doing this because this is what you want to do? So, but then I've also seen it with people who I can tell in their chart had, it's almost like they were like in prison. Like the whole idea of Uranus is freedom. So it's almost like they didn't get to feel that freedom, right? So there's lots of karma around rebellion and individuality and freedom. So also Uranus is a lot about change. So it could be someone who resisted change in past lives, or someone who is like, too extreme with change, and like I said, too extreme in the sense of, yeah, of instability in a sense, right? So either way, like any retrograde planet is either too little or too much of the archetype of that planet. So what would too little Uranus be? It would be, yeah, someone who's too boxed in, who is like kind of in a prison, whether it's, more so metaphorically. I mean, I guess it could be physical, but yeah, like let's say they're in a karmic relationship. I just had a client the other day, and I could tell through her chart that she had a tendency of being in relationships that had her very much boxed in, where she wasn't able to kind of think for herself and find her own sense of who she is. So, yes, embracing freedom, embracing the individuality that aligns with the higher self, and working through any of the fears associated with that. And besides that, let's think. I would say that Uranus retrograde. Yeah. So overall, I think that's probably everything, right? Yeah. So it can be. it's someone who I think has to get better at knowing who they are. Now, besides that, let's think. I mean, yeah, I guess I kind of said like, yeah, like a fear of change could be common. Someone who had like in past lives a big fear of change, or a fear of chaos. So yeah, that resistance of change, of evolution, and I don't mean like the Plutonian type. I mean more, the Uranian type of individualism, where you become more like yourself, right? It's like, yeah, it's like the woman who grew up. I'm talking about someone, I'm not gonna say who. She grew up as a double Aquarius in a very traditional home and lived her whole life, and you would never ever think that she was a double Aquarius because it was suppressed by the tradition. That's an example. And I'm sure that her Aquarian energy came out when she was younger, and it was just pushed away. It's one of my grandmas who's passed away, or yeah. So I think I've said everything about that one. Yeah, I think it's important, like with the Jupiter one, to have that like very unique internal, like individualized way of thinking about things. And a lot of those like Uranian downloads can come very internally. So, and a lot of this like rebuilding past life karma, around freedom, around individuality, it's a very internal transformation. So yeah, learning, and then like with people who have it on the extreme side, it's like learning patience when it comes to change and individualism, and learning to be purposeful with that, right? Like you're not just doing it to shock people. Yeah. Okay. So last two, let me write these down. So Neptune Retrograde. So Neptune Retrograde is very interesting because it has to do, and with all of these outer planet ones around, starting with Jupiter, like around like 40 or so % of people have them. So yeah, so you can tell. And by the way, I filmed a whole video and it never recorded before, which was like really, really good. So I forget what I said before, but like people who have a lot of the retrograde planets in their chart, like you see like it was either like a month or 2 months ago, like nearly everything was in retrograde, right? So imagine someone was born in there, and we're all born in times where that are exactly in line with the karma, right? As Edgar Cayce said, with our karma and what we're trying to achieve in this lifetime. So imagine, baby, you remember how that time was very, very, we were very analytical about the past. We were really looking into it. It felt like time really slowed down. So imagine being born with that. You're born with that. You have that within you. So with Neptune's obviously about compassion, spirituality. So people with that, the karmic theme could be spiritual disconnection or escapism, and there could be someone who kind of avoided their physical body, and avoided reality in a sense. Just maybe they were just very. They could be people who, were drug addicts or alcoholics, people who use substances to kind of avoid reality, or people who were like using spirituality in that way, right, to spiritually bypass. Or people who were just like overly delusional, overly idealistic, just disconnected from reality, essentially. Why is this not working? Hold on. That's not good. Sorry, guys. So, yeah. So the goal with this is to hold on, guys. This is not good. The goal with Neptune in this position, there it is. I got it. So the goal with Neptune is to develop that deep spiritual insight and intuition, while also staying grounded, right? So it kind of reminds you of like the Neptune, the Pisces Virgo axis of like, okay, yes, you want to be trusting God, deep with your spirituality, but also have like that way to apply it and to not, for example, be too extreme where you're like forgetting about your physical body, forgetting about sleep, forgetting about health, forgetting about just so in the ethereal realm, forgetting about your responsibilities as a incarnated human, right? So staying grounded and not going towards avoidance or because a lot of times with Neptune retrograde, like the imbalance can be where for whatever reason, like I know several people with this, right, where or who have, I don't know if they have Neptune retrograde, but they have this archetype where it's like they just don't see, they're like delusional. They just don't see reality in the correct way. Now, I believe being delusional is a good thing. Like, I think that in some way you need to have a healthy level of delusionality, because what does it mean? Delusionality essentially is manifestation. I'm talking about extremes. I'm talking about this one guy I know who, has talent, but just thinks that, like, doesn't work hard at all. He has talent in what he does. He has knowledge, but he has zero work ethic. And he genuinely, the delusion is like, he talks about it and he genuinely thinks that God or something is he's just gonna like get the success. But then he treats his physical body like horribly. He has no boundaries. That's another thing in Neptune retrograde, right? Is that like lacking boundaries, because in order to turn your spiritual insights into something good, you need to have boundaries. You need to be able to say no to people to really pursue higher ground, right? So people with this could struggle with clarity, but and also Neptune retrograde could be someone who, there could be some like spiritual issues, right? Like spiritual entities, stuff like that. I'd say that's more like Neptune square nodes, though. Yeah. But so everything's more inward. So it's like, more inward spirituality, and they can kind of fear. They can have different fears. We'll get into that with Pluto next. But it can be people who can be very in touch with the collective unconscious, a very high level of sensitivity, obviously depending on the whole chart. But Neptune, it can essentially create also issues with clarity. Seeing the difference between reality and illusion, right? Imagination, reality. Like I was just giving that example of my friend. So, and like also going back to like the kind of like idealization that can really show itself with people, where they can think, oh, this person is so good, but they see the potential, like kind of like the Venus Neptune in love, right? Like those aspects in love, or Neptune in the 7th or 5th house. Where they're just like, oh, this person's perfect, they're amazing, and then they end up like doing something terrible to them. So, like kind of getting real with reality, and a lot of times there is that need for time alone to heal through solitude. Just kind of connect with the inner world, and like I said, boundaries, stronger emotional, energetic boundaries is like one of the biggest things for this. Because a lot of people I know with this who struggle with it, they are just very bad with that. So they might understand who they are, and like they might have great insights and great things they can give back. But then just learning to trust the gut and just get better with clarity, because it can be confusing. There can be like a lot of confusion around spirituality, and ultimately, like, it's about compassion and connection to God. So okay, so next is, let me just write this down. So next is Pluto, last one. I wish I had a better system for this. So Pluto retrograde. So this one is the only one I have. So Pluto retrograde is very interesting. But basically, it is about someone who, really, obviously Pluto relates to our shadow, to power struggles. So a lot of people with Pluto retrograde, they avoided. There's a lot of different ways it could have played out, right? But they could have, avoided confronting different inner fears or their shadow side in past lives. So all that could lead to transformation. Or they could have been people who threw their power onto others too much, right? Like misuse their power is a better way of saying it. And yeah, like I said, avoided facing their fears, and a lot of times that can manifest as just like feeling the need to control others, right? In a low vibe Scorpio Pluto energy, right? And also another one is being deeply wounded by betrayal or loss, right? So essentially Pluto retrograde, they're here to, and they can be very powerful people, but they're here to go into that shadow and to finish that shadow work. So it can be a very, very deep one because Pluto does represent that ultimate planet, right? So it is about someone who is here to confront the darker sides of the psyche. And a lot of times it's a continuation of something they started from past life. So a lot of these retrograde planets, one way, I don't look at them as like, oh, like a failure. I look at them as like, yes, like it can be very mysterious. It could be someone who started something, started a mission. Yeah, right? They started a mission. This is maybe a download I'm getting. They started a mission, and it's something that takes more than just one past life to finish. So one incarnation to finish. So it's not necessarily like always a failure. Take that one that just came to me, so I don't know. You can take that for what you want, but it feels right. I don't know. It feels right, and I feel like it's connected to something I've learned, or maybe it was in my dreams or something. I don't know. But yeah, so learning to transform pain into strength and not just take pain and use it to hit off on other people. So besides that, I would say that there. Yeah. So what else can I say? Yeah, so just all of that Plutonian energy turned inwards, it can just like make a very intense, it can make someone who needs a lot of privacy, and their relationship with their subconscious and with their past life karma is very, very deep. And there's a lot, yeah, like I said, like a lot of unfinished business around power, around control, around a deep emotional healing. So like when I say, you see how many extremes there can be? Because like I'm just gonna give you guys a little thing from my chart, what I've kind of realized with and it's not just from this place. It's from, I have Pluto on the IC, retrograde, square Venus, square nodes, which are with Venus. So I know, to me, like and other things in my chart, I've kind of gotten to the point where it's like I was betrayed, and when you get betrayed, it makes it really difficult to trust other people, right? On a deep level, and I've noticed, I'm just being, saying a little, there's a little bit about me or how I view my chart. So there's different ways it can show up, and it does take a lot of reflection, meditation, whatever, contemplation is the correct word, to try to figure out what it means for you. But yeah, so the need to confront deep wounds, and go through that rebirth and that soul growth, right? And I think a big part of Pluto retrograde and Pluto in general is just like noticing those subconscious patterns and letting go of what the soul no longer needs, and maybe what the ego wants. So a big thing with that would be like the need to be powerful, the most, all this stuff. The need to have this, the need to have that, the need to show these people, the need to, all these kinds of things that are very, very common. So yeah, it manifests as like inner shadow work, and someone who like definitely needs to dig deep into their psyche for the change, and it's something that's going to be more private with the retrograde always, right? But there can be a big fear of vulnerability, or even like a fear of loss. So, or even like a fear of losing control, like whether it's of themselves or circumstances in their life, letting go. And it can, in relationships, it can manifest as people like clinging on to people, situations, all that stuff long past their expiration date. Having trouble letting go with that. And then in relationships, it can kind of, it sounds more like Venus square Pluto or opposite Pluto, but it can kind of make people drawn to relationships that parallel their karmic internal work around these Plutonian elements. So what's the goal? Yeah, reclaim the inner power, become very good at letting go, right? Become very, very good at that, just surrender, letting go, to, only taking what the soul needs and letting go what the ego wants, healing those past life wounds, and and then perhaps being able to do it for other people. Anyways, that's it. I literally did this video twice in a row. I hope I didn't repeat myself or say the same thing twice in my video. But anyways, let me know if you guys need any readings. This week I'm all booked. I have a few openings. There's just message me on Instagram at @JesseInnocentAstro, or email me at jesseinnocentastrology@gmail.com. We can set it up right away. This week is, I think, fully booked, or this next coming week. It would be this week by the time you guys see this. But next week, the week of the first week of February, I have a few openings, and the week after I have openings too. So let me know if you're interested. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please let me know in the comments what you think, or any type of video you'd like to see me do in the future. And if you have any of these placements, I'd be curious to hear how your experiences with them. All right, thank you guys. Talk to you later. Ciao.